Hi, welcome to another edition of Pauline Interviews. We are at Franciscan Spiritual Center in Milwaukee, Oregon, and the topic today is near-death experience. I want to thank you for watching and being part of my show, and I need to clarify near-death experience, and then I will be talking to Mark pretty soon, and he will tell us his experience. But you can think of near-death as, some people will say, well, I was near a person that died, so I was near death. Another person might say, well, I was in a car accident and I just almost missed dying. I mean, I could have, crashed, but I missed that. So that was near death. Then some people might have actually died in a hospital and come back, but didn't have what we call an out-of-body experience. So the near death we're talking about today is where you actually physically die and you leave your body consciously, have an experience, and come back. And one of the people I'm talking to today is Mark, and I'm going to have him pronounce his last name because I didn't practice it. And Mark is here at the Franciscan Spiritual Center. We'll talk about that a little later. But first, I want to welcome Mark to my show. And would you tell us your name?
Okay, Mark Lesniewski, and I mentioned if you want to sound Polish, it's Lesniewski.
I'm having trouble pronouncing it with English, but say it once more. It's Mark
Lesniewski.
Lesniewski. Mark,
Right.
It's not that hard. Mark Lesniewski, but I didn't practice. Now, Mark, I also want to introduce you as you have a Master's of Arts in Contemplative Psychotherapy. You're also a retreat leader and spiritual director here at the Franciscan Spiritual Center. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but first, I want you to give me some of your background, what your life is like, what you've been doing before your near-death experience, and then we'll get to near-death, and then what your life was like after it.
Okay. I grew up Roman Catholic in the 60s and 70s, south side of Chicago, and then a south suburb of Chicago. Pretty traditional, and when we moved out to the suburbs, it was, the parish, going to school there, sports there, church there, so parish life was really big. And also it was very homogenous, and there wasn't diversity there. And some of that in Chicago at the time was running away from diversity, white flight it's known as. And so I have this creative spirit, but I wasn't able to really connect with it at the time. And it was all about sports and partying, that kind of thing.
Well, you're a young guy.
A young guy, yeah, had a lot of energy and creative energy, and didn't know what to do with it in a very creative way. So that creative energy eventually became self-destructive.
How so?
Over partying, a lot of over partying, and then doing foolish things with my body, throwing myself around after the football or the basketball, running into walls. I had concussions and stitches and broken this and broken that, and some of it was just foolishness. It wasn't accidents. There was something inside of me that was dying. I can only say that by looking back at it now. At the time, I thought I was doing what everyone else was doing, what I was supposed to be doing. But looking
How did your parents respond to that? I mean, you're a young man still living at home?
I think they had some concerns, but it was like a lot of people are doing this. A lot of young people, even in high school, are going out and partying every weekend and
then no direction,
drinking
unsatisfied
too much.
with life, no direction. You feel like there's something pulling you, but you don't know where to go.
Again, looking back, there was something pulling me. I had no idea what. I wouldn't have been able to name it. Nobody else was naming it. Church, even though there was a lot of wonderful things there, and there's a sense of mystery within Catholicism that's been maintained, but nobody talks about it. Nobody connects with it.
I mean, in the Bible, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that they don't talk about, like what we're going to talk about. And we'll mention that later.
Yeah.
And even maybe past lives, people that have died and come back, ghosts and hauntings. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible, in the Catholic Church. I mean, even priests do exorcisms, but yet they don't talk about any of that.
Right, yeah. And then some of that, as we become so intellectually, the Enlightenment, not the spiritual enlightenment, but the movement, the philosophical movement of enlightenment, and everything went up into the head. And so the mystics were people who were considered dangerous and silenced. And
now we're talking about the 70s and 80s, so like you said, that was a little more still narrow-minded. Well, I'd say narrow-minded, but not open-minded. Let's put it that. I'll be positive. Not open-minded. So at that time, were you? It sounds like you were religious, but were you spiritual?
In deeper ways, yes. And again, I wouldn't have been able to name it, but I remember as a little boy being brought into the church or various churches there, and seeing the old women in their babushkas doing the silent devotional stuff, or the chanting with the beads, and all these things that are coming back and in so many different traditions and have been there for a long time. That was there. So the smells and the
incense,
and just the sense of something numinous being there in that space, that this was sacred space. So I felt that.
So the energy felt good.
The energy felt good, yeah. And then time would come for Mass, and so much of it, yes, was still deep like that and beyond my understanding.
Say that
but
again,
also,
ES?
The rituals?
Yeah, no, I thought you said ES.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm hearing things.
Yeah, maybe I did. We'll find out when we rerun the tape. But so that was there, but I was more there to clown around and have my buddies see me clowning around, and
Fortunately, you're still on this planet.
Yeah.
Well, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, we never know.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
so was your near-death experience as a result of this being, you running around and doing things and putting yourself in danger?
Good insight there, Pauline. As I look back, I was coming near death one way or another through my behavior. Drinking too much, smoking dope, doing dangerous things in cars and whatnot. Yeah.
So what actually happened to you to take you out of your body?
Well, this something came before that, so I'll do the setup for that.
Sounds good.
So one night I was kind of hit my bottom, and it was during my last year in bachelor's degree college, and again just living very destructively, and I made a foolish choice over a young woman that I was dating in the summertime, and she blew me off, and I saw her dancing with one of my friends, and that was the last straw. And I went out, icy roads, in a car driving. I was drunk, I was stoned, it was late, early morning actually, about 3 o'clock, and I put the pedal to the metal. And then at an intersection that was usually pretty busy, I slammed on the brakes, did 360 and spun around. And later years, I went to see a therapist, and he referred to that as a passive suicide attempt. I didn't plan it, but it was one of those acts of passion.
You didn't care what happened to you.
Right, exactly. I didn't care. So that was my bottom, and I lost my mind. And when you talk to or read various mystics, one of the things that they talk about is having to lose your mind to bring on big mind. And I lost my mind that night. And the car died, and hear the language, all the metaphors here. The car died, my vehicle for getting around died. I did start it back up again. Unbeknownst to me, the gas tank had ruptured, so there was gasoline on the ground.
Oh no.
And then I start the ignition.
Fire?
Nothing. I could have been blown to kingdom come. So all sorts of ways.
You were near death there, literally.
All sorts of ways of being near death, yeah. And I did crack up. I lost it. And cops came and pulled my dad and I in the back of the car and talked to me, and I lost my mind that night. And knew something had to change. Within 24 hours, I went to Mass for the first time in...
But that wasn't your near-death experience. You didn't leave your body.
Not yet.
Oh, wow.
Not yet.
Wow, this is getting very interesting.
Yeah, so it's building up to that, but you can see near death became kind of like my milieu. This is what I was living in.
So that was the one near death we talked about, actually getting close to death but not really dying.
Exactly. Exactly. So college kid, I didn't go to Mass during college or anything like that. So about 4 years since I had gone, and was the only thing I knew how to do. I knew something had to change, so I went to a Saturday evening Mass, and in the back of the church there, consider what I had just done and in my life. I felt as low as can be. It was my bottom. And all of a sudden, I heard a voice coming from inside and outside. And the voice, in my traditional way of interpreting it, was Jesus telling me, "You are the light of the world."
That you're worth something.
Now consider that. Just when I considered myself so worthless that I was willing to kill myself. And within 24 hours, I'm given this message that is so incongruent with my current inner experience. I wound up going into this like ecstasy rapture in the back of the church. I had enough consciousness within me to try and cover it up and not let anyone see that this stuff was going on. So then I became very internal, even though I was a partier and out there and never an extrovert, but the energy was just always out and running around and partying and
like you're searching
sports.
for something.
Something going on, yeah. And I spent a lot of time alone in the dark, just pondering stuff, and people did think that I was going crazy. Had this happened in a community that didn't know me in this day and age, I would have been locked up because I was a danger to myself and to others driving the way I did. I'm hearing voices. I'm still living at home.
What are your parents thinking?
I have no idea. But at that moment, after the police left, and my dad and I went back into the house, and I'm crying, and I'm maybe cry here right now, my whole family gathered around me, and they gave me an example of human to human unconditional love.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You got lucky.
I got lucky, and this was a day and age where parents were still, the good parenting seemed to be like criticizing. You criticize your kid to help them to become better than who they are. So I was used to that, and it was something that we just heard, not just in our house, but you can hit the ball better than that. That kind of stuff.
No wonder you feel low about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So something had to give, and it did that night. So as this is going on, as I'm changing, and something is happening in me that I can't describe and couldn't tell anybody about it, didn't know how, I got an offer to move out to California to live with a friend of mine and live for free while I looked for work. And so my first flight ever, flew out to California and landed when it was dark. So then we go to his house. I go into my apartment. I couldn't see my surroundings. And sometime just before sunrise, and this was actually during the Holy Week, sometime before sunrise, my spirit came out of my body. I'll use traditional language here again. There's interpreted stuff here of ineffable things.
Your consciousness, your experience.
Yeah. So I went out of my body, was hovering above the bed. I could see my...
What precipitated it?
Here's some of the talk that I'm hearing about near-death experiences. I've also studied, my master's paper was on mysticism and psychosis, and where's the line? Where's this fuzzy boundary? And so a lot of times people will have their first either mystical or psychotic break when they make a break from old life. So there's a death there too.
The death of the old life.
The death of the old life. Something inside me knew I was never going back, either physically, geographically, or internally. I could not go back.
To your previous life.
Yeah, so a lot of young people will go off to college and have a psychotic break. There's that separation. So that's, I'm up hovering above my body, and all of a sudden I could just feel this story, an Old Testament story of Jacob wrestling. Some interpretations say wrestling with an angel, some say with God. So I have this wrestling match with this incredible numinous power, and it seemed to me like it was a match between God and Satan for my soul.
While you were out.
While I was out.
And what's your body doing? Could you look down and see it? You weren't.
I could see it.
You weren't dead. I mean, you didn't have an accident like most near-death experiences. You weren't.
No one
in
could
danger.
verify that I was, whether or not I was dead. When I looked down, I saw an empty carcass.
Okay. You know what? This is really exciting. We're going to do in part 2. We're going to keep people hanging here. They have to come back if they want to hear what happened to you.
Okay.
So once again, thanks for watching Pauline Interviews. I'm interviewing Mark Lesniewski on his near-death experience, and we just got started. So stay tuned. We're going to get to more of what actually happened to Mark. Thanks for watching.